What is up, guys? Dakota here, and welcome back to the Driven Mad channel. So, as you guys can see, there is a Colorado ZR2 behind me. Now, it's not mine, it's actually my mom's. I may have convinced her to purchase one. So what I thought we'd kind of do is, introduce it to the channel. It may show up every now and then. She does acknowledge that we will probably take it off-road, so that's cool. But mainly what I thought I'd do is just point out that I think the ZR2 is one of the most underrated, like, off-roaders, I guess, compared to the likes of, say, you know, the Wrangler or a Tacoma, 4Runner, or heck, even the new Bronco. I just feel like it doesn't get as much credit as it should. So today we're going to talk about why I think it's underrated and why I think people need to give it a bit more praise, even though the Colorado has been out for quite some time. So we're going to try to do this relatively quickly just because it's like 35 degrees out right now, so your boy's not used to it. But what I wanted to point out was I think Chevrolet did the right thing with the ZR2, which is odd because normally when it comes to non-performance car things, they usually do a pretty piss poor job. If you know, Blazer is just one example. But what I like is that on the front end here, so the normal Colorado, you get fog lights, but on the front here, they were like, well, you don't need fog lights, what you need is more clearance. So in front of the tires, it's got an entirely new front end compared to a normal Colorado. So it's got much more clearance up here, got a much more aggressive approach angle compared to a regular Colorado. It's way more aggressive, you get way more clearance. They don't have that stupid air dam down there. It's got a nice skid plate and, like any good off-roader, red tow hooks. In addition to the entirely new front grille and bumper and everything, you also get these much wider fenders. So the overall width is about 3.5 inches wider on the ZR2, which gives it a nice stance. And it just looks really awesome with those fender flares. It just looks pretty sick. And then come over to the side here. Unlike, say, a Tacoma TRD Pro, right, this $50,000 off-road truck, the ZR2 at least comes standard with actual, like, off-road tires, whereas, like, the Tacoma comes with basically slightly more aggressive all seasons, where, you know, whether you like these tires or not, they at least are aggressive enough to where when you do a go off-road, you're not going to get as much slip as you would if they were, say, all seasons. And you can't talk about that without talking about the suspension, which the Colorado has a 2-inch lift over a standard Colorado, the ZR2, excuse me. And it's got the Multimatic spool valve shocks. Now, if you guys have ever paid attention to any of this stuff, Chevy really likes to use it. They're actually using the same system on the Silverado ZR2, and they use the same system on the ZL1 Camaro 1LE. Basically what it does is it has a bunch of valves in the actual shock body itself that, depending at certain positions, can stiffen and kind of change the fluid depending on what the shock is doing. So that way, if you're jumping, it'll be in the position to have the stiffest setting. That way it doesn't bottom out, or whether you're going slow and kind of rock crawling, it'll allow some flex. And like any good off-road vehicle, it has some nice rock rails. Now, one thing that I will point out, if you guys buy a ZR2 from a dealership, make sure that these are on there, because a lot of times they forget to put them on because they don't ship with the truck, they ship separately. So make sure those are on there. But again, nice rock rails and a very good breakover angle. Again, this is gonna not be as aggressive of a breakover angle as, say, like a two-door Wrangler or two-door Bronco. But compared to a regular mid-sized truck, it's pretty good. Another clear view of those awesome gold Multimatic spool valve shocks, which is just really cool to look at. I like that they stand out. You can see it from back here, so that's pretty cool. And also, one other thing that they did with the ZR2 is there used to be a step that would come down to make it easier to get into the bed. But again, this is designed to go off-road, right? So your departure angle, being that it has a bed, is gonna be worse than, say, again, a Bronco or a Wrangler or something like that. So what they did was get rid of that step so you can have the breakover angle, or excuse me, the departure angle be as good as it can be while still maintaining an actual bumper and bed. Okay, so now that we're on the inside of the Colorado, there's a few things that I want to point out in here. So what's funny is this is also another spot where I feel like, again, it's just underrated. I have been in the Ford Ranger, the new Tacoma, pick which model, doesn't matter, the new Frontier, the Gladiator, and inside, even though this thing came out in 2015, this body style, it still feels very nice in here. You know, there's soft touch things everywhere on the steering wheel. Things feel very well put together. And compared to, say, something like the Tacoma, for example, this does feel nicer than the Tacoma. And again, as you guys know, if you're familiar with my channel, I don't have a bias towards anything. I own Ford stuff, I own Jeeps, I own Chevys. I don't really care. I don't really have brand loyalties. My cousin just bought a Toyota GR86 that I recommended to him, so I don't have any real brand loyalties, just things that I feel like objectively, if they're better, I don't mind saying that they're better. And objectively, this is a nicer place to be, at least in my opinion, than the Tacoma, especially the older Frontier. And even the Ranger, just this feels nicer. When you get nice ZR2 here in the stitching, you get leather seats, heated seats. For 22, they actually changed the shifter. So it got rid of that kind of clunky, old, weird looking shifter, and they replaced it with a much nicer looking shifter. While we're inside, we can talk about some of the things that make the ZR2 awesome off-road. So we haven't taken it off-road yet, but I have seen one off-road when I've had the Wrangler and Bronco out on the trails. It was the first mid-sized truck to have a front locking differential and a rear locking differential. Since then, the only thing to have that is the Gladiator. This is much nicer to drive. Now, I mean, and it's designed to jump, so you can do some rock crawling and you can take it out to Baja and have some fun. So I think that's really awesome, and for the money, it's not that bad. You can get a two-door Wrangler more expensive than this. This vehicle is, you know, $45,000, $46,000. That's what my two-door Jeep cost when it was brand new. But if you build that same Jeep now, it's about $5 to $8 grand more than what this is. It's kind of a shame that more people don't really appreciate this car, because again, GM doesn't usually make very good off-road attempt things. I mean, the Trail Boss is a laughing stock. And honestly, the new Silverado ZR2, sidetrack, I just don't really feel like it's a real Raptor / TRX competitor. But back to the ZR2. I think it's time we take this thing for a drive and just kind of talk about how it is. So while we're on the move here, again, just listening to it, it's super quiet and comfortable. Now, we're only doing 30 miles an hour, but once we get out on the highway, especially after driving the Bronco for a little bit, it's so odd how quiet this thing is. It just feels weird. Knowing, again, when you put in your mind that it's got locking front and rear diffs, it's got off-road tuned suspension, you would think, okay, it's going to be fairly loud, it's not going to be fairly comfortable, but it just is. Now, obviously, like a Tacoma or anything isn't going to ride terrible, or the Ford Ranger. Again, neither one of those have the same equipment when it comes to off-roading. Like, you can't get the Ranger Raptor here in America, so Ford, the closest thing they have is the FX4, which doesn't have anything like the suspension this has. Doesn't have front and rear locking diffs. It doesn't have the same approach and departure angle as this does, or breakover angle even. The Tacoma is definitely really the closest competitor. Some of you will say the Gladiator. Quite frankly, if I was to, I would rather have this because it's more of a truck in the sense of it's a bit more traditional, as opposed to just being a Wrangler with a bed. And the Gladiator has a super long wheelbase, so it's breakover angle and departure angle are really no better than this. Now, so I just want you to listen to how quiet this is. So keep in mind, it can rock crawl. It's got a good approach angle. It's got front and rear locking diffs. It's got very aggressive tires. We're doing 60 miles an hour, and just listen to how quiet it is. That's insane. I mean, just compared to, again, it's because you can't remove things and it's way more aerodynamic. But even still, when you take into account other trucks in this class, it is very refined. It's very comfortable. I mean, you kind of understand why the Colorado won Motor Trend's Truck of the Year, like I think it was 2 times in a row, because it is just very good. And even though it came out in 2015, it still is able to compete with the newer cars that have come out. I mean, the Frontier basically came out and it just put it comparable to this. It didn't do anything that this hadn't already done. And going back to some of the off-road stuff, you know, as somebody, if you're more kind of the less of the rock crawler type, and maybe you just like going on longer distance trails, or you are more of a desert racer and you don't want to drop, you know, $70,000 to $80,000 or $90,000 on a Raptor or TRX, it's hard to beat this thing. When you're going on those long overland journeys, you've got the suspension to help you get through most of those obstacles you're going to overcome. And I feel like it's a very solid platform. You know, AEV makes a lot of good, very OEM looking accessories for this, to where you can easily put 35s on it. And then again, you drive it, when you're not using it as your off-road toy, it's a Colorado, so it's quiet, it's comfortable, it gets relatively decent gas mileage. But the biggest reason to me why this is better than those other vehicles is because on-road, again, I've driven all of them. In my opinion, this is better on-road than all of them. The ride is very good, it handles very well, and it's super quiet and refined in here. So on-road, it is better. Now, when it comes to off-roading, again, we're gonna test this thing out, but just from, you know, watching all the press reviews when it was initially came out and everything, from the factory, the only thing that even comes remotely as close equipped with off-road goodies is the Gladiator, because from the factory, both the Nissan, the Ranger, and the Tacoma come with basically all seasons instead of true, you know, either all-terrains or even mud terrains. So from the factory, you don't have to change tires in this, or again, the Gladiator, which is just one less expense. Now, is it a huge deal? No, but again, it's just from the factory, it comes more equipped to handle more aggressive off-road terrain. Again, having front and rear locking diffs. The only other one to do that in this class is the Gladiator, and you have to get the Rubicon, and it's a much more expensive vehicle. I mean, if you get a Gladiator similarly equipped to this in terms of creature comforts and off-road capabilities, you're talking about a $60,000+ rig, which, you know, if that's what you want to spend, cool, but when this is 15 grand less, like that's a hard pill to swallow. And again, if you're looking for a truck, because for me, I'd rather have the Wrangler than the Gladiator. And if I'm looking for something where I want to bed but still be able to go off-road and not have to spend Raptor or TRX money, this is it. Hence why I suggested this to my mom. I mean, I wouldn't have suggested something to her if I didn't actually think it was good. And really, the only downside I'd say of the ZR2 is that compared to the regular Colorado, you are able to tow less. Whether you get the gas engine or the diesel, you can only tow 5,000 pounds, which is still a decent amount. I mean, that's easily able to tow a trailer and then put your track car on the back, or, you know, a nice size, you know, 21, 22 foot boat in the back. So it's still a decent amount, but compared to the regular Colorado that can tow 7,000 or 7,700 pounds with the diesel, it is a little bit less. So yeah, like I said, those are just some of the points that I wanted to make about why I think it's underrated, because I don't feel like on social media and on YouTube and everything, it gets enough credit for being as good as it is, because it is just a solid truck. Like, there's nothing glaringly wrong about it. Now, if they dropped a 6.2 in it, then, you know, maybe I'd have one. But so anyways, guys, we will be taking this thing off-road, and we'll compare it to the Bronco and the Wrangler just for fun. So if there's anything you guys want to see, let me know, and I'm sure my mom will be more than happy to let me just borrow it if I toss her the keys to one of my cars. So if there's anything you want to see, please let me know. And if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe. And if you do subscribe, make sure to click that bell notification so you get notified for more videos like this one. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.